Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I'm bringing you your weekly reading tea break. I gotta admit, you guys, January is Januarying pretty hard. I'm finding it really difficult to have the energy to do anything other than read books, play a bit of World of Warcraft, and sleep. And maybe get through my workday. So videos may be a little bit sporadic until things get a little bit more energized around here, but until then, I'm gonna update you on what I have read and bought this week. So first up, I'm currently reading 3 books. You cannot find 3 more different books, I think, for someone to be reading at once, but that's how we roll. So the first book that I'm currently reading, what I definitely consider my main read, is The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels by Janice Hallett. I absolutely adored her debut novel, which is The Appeal. Really good kind of mixed media crime novel, and I could not get through her second book. So I was very apprehensive about this, but I'm actually loving it. So the first page of this book says, "You have a key that opens a safe deposit box. Inside is a bundle of documents, archived research material for a book that has just been published. You must read it all and make a decision. Either replace the documents and the box and throw the key away where it will never be found, or take everything to the police." And so begins this mysterious case. This is basically just a pile of research notes and materials from a true crime author writing a book about the Alperton Angels, who were a cult in London who committed ritual suicide. The only survivors were a teenage boy and girl and their baby. It's been 18 years, so kind of the idea behind this book is to find the baby and kind of get a retrospective from that perspective. I am just over halfway through. I'm really enjoying it. Things are getting really weird. There's a lot of mysterious stuff going on, and it really is kind of playing off of that mixed media sort of format in a really clever and fun way. It's the reason that I really love The Appeal, and this is going well so far. Then I've got a book I think I mentioned last time. I am still reading the short story collection The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez. I can't deal with this cover, hence the post-it note. I think I've read the first 3 or 4. I won't lie, the Alperton Angels has kind of taken over my physical reading at the moment, so I'm not very far in this. I haven't made a lot of progress, but now that I'm reminded that I'm actually reading this book, I am going to be getting through it this week. And the last book that I'm currently reading is a book that I've been very curious about for a long time because it was massive on TikTok when I joined TikTok, and I've just never bothered to get around to it, but it was an Audible daily deal, so I am listening to the audiobook. This is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. In this book, we follow a character named Poppy, who is the Maiden. She's this kind of sort of political and religious figure that is meant to bring about a kind of new era for the people of this particular land. Her life is very solitary, and when her personal guard is killed, a super hot new guard ends up taking his place, and, you know, sparks fly and such. But of course, Poppy is more than she seems. She's not the kind of demure, constantly veiled maiden figure. She knows how to fight. She has a lot of passion and personality. And yeah, it's fun so far. It's not the best thing I've ever read, but I am really thoroughly enjoying it. I'm about halfway through. I'm listening to the audiobook while I play World of Warcraft, so that's actually been really fun to kind of have a fantasy game during a fantasy book. And yeah, I can see why people like this so much. I have heard that the quality drops off pretty dramatically sort of as the series goes on, so I don't know if I'm going to continue with the series or not, but I'm having a good time reading this one. So I finished 3 books since we last talked. 2 of them are audiobooks that I binged while playing World of Warcraft. As I mentioned, I've picked it up again, which has been quite fun. I've been unable to get into it again since like the 3-year period where I played like every day for a while, but I'm back into it now, really enjoying it, and it's great for audiobooks. So the first one is not an audiobook. I actually finished this on our live stream, our reading sprints that we did last week. This is Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight by Riku Onda. This is a short psychological thriller that was translated from Japanese, and we follow a couple who is sort of having their last night in their apartment before they go their separate ways. However, there's a little bit of a twist. Someone died a year prior, and each believes that the other committed the murder, and so they're both trying to get the other to confess before the day is out. There are some content warnings that go with this book that would be massive spoilers for the book itself, so I would recommend, if you're curious about what those might be, go to Storygraph and check that out. I'm not going to post them here because, again, they are actually quite spoilery, but I really enjoyed this. It's short, it's thrilling, it is absolutely not what I expected, and I picked this up totally at random because it was recommended on Amazon, and I'm really happy I did. Then I listened to the audiobook for The Suspicions of Mr. Witcher by Kate Summerscale. This is a book that I've been meaning to read for absolute ages. My mum recommended it, my sister recommended it, and it was fantastic. This is a nonfiction book that revolves around the case of a murder at a place called Road Hill House in 1860, in which the young son of the family is taken from his cot and murdered. And we follow the detective, Mr. Witcher, who is investigating this case and sort of the backlash against him and his ideas, but also the inspiration that he had on kind of culture. He is apparently one of the possible inspirations for Sherlock Holmes, for example. And this book also talks a lot about sort of the emergence of crime fiction and detective fiction and how that has impacted sort of the public perspective on these police officers. This is a really, really good book, a really fabulously written book, a really well presented book. I absolutely adored it. I thought that the way that she sort of put the story forward was incredibly effective, and the audiobook was also excellent. I would highly recommend this, especially if you're interested in any kind of British history or true crime. And the last book that I read last week is actually not on my TBR, which I have very mixed feelings about actually reading something that's not gonna like tick a box on my list, but I listened to the audiobook for the Amityville Horror. The author's name escapes my mind, but the cover is up on the screen. This is included in your Audible membership and it's quite short, so if you're curious about this book, would definitely recommend picking up that audiobook if you have Audible. It's basically the story of the haunting of this house in Amityville on Long Island in New York. It's a famous case. I feel like everyone has at least heard of it, but it gives you kind of the inside scoop as to what supposedly happened. I think this book has long since been debunked and the whole case has kind of been debunked, but I find this kind of thing really, really fascinating, really interesting, and it's quite spooky. So if you're interested in that, would go ahead and recommend picking it up. And then in terms of what I bought this week, I've got 3 books. The first one being The Mysterious Case of the Albertina Angels. I went in for one of these other books. They didn't have it, so I ordered it in. And then I went ahead and bought this instead. I didn't realize this was out. The book that I ordered into the bookshop was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. He's an author that I tend to really, really enjoy, although there have been a couple of misses with his books, especially the last one, The Final Girl Support Club. I really, really, truly hated that book, but I have really, really high hopes for this. In this book, we follow a woman named Louise who found out that her parents have died and she has to fly to Charleston to kind of deal with their affairs and put the family house back together and get it ready to be sold. She also has to deal with her brother Mark, who's a bit of a layabout and is kind of the complete opposite of her. But some houses don't want to be sold, and this house seems to have plans for them. This sounds great. I'm really excited for this. And the last book that I have is a pre-order. This is the Waterstones edition of Godkiller by Hannah Kanner. This is a kind of like high fantasy debut book, and look, I mean, come on. This is about a woman who is, I'm sure you guessed it, a god killer, and the one god that she cannot kill is the god of white lies, who has bound himself to a young noble, and now the two of them are on the run from assassins. So they end up teaming up and they travel to kind of this abandoned, rotted city where the last of the wild gods reside, and they can be granted a favor. This is one that I don't know a huge amount about, and that's very intentional. This is one of those books that I feel like, because it's so beautiful, I've been kind of seeing it everywhere, everyone is talking about it. I don't really want to know anything about it before I dive in. It's a lot shorter than I expected it to be. Knowing that this was kind of epic fantasy, I thought this would be like 500 pages, but it's not. So I'm really hoping to get to this one soon so I can kind of figure out what this is all about. I think in terms of what I'm going to read next, it's probably going to be a case of actually finishing the books that I'm currently in the middle of, not getting too ahead of myself. Then I will probably go ahead and pick up these 2, but I'm also reading my way through my pound per book haul that I posted recently. I've read about half of it already, which is quite exciting. I really want to get through that. I have all of these on my nightstand, and I'm trying to actually read down my nightstand, which is going to be quite a feat. But if you're interested in seeing what I'm going to read next, go ahead and tune in next week for another tea break. In the meantime, I would love to hear what you've been reading this week, especially if you've read any of these books. I would love to know what you thought of them. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.